Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We are here today with Jeremy Pryor. He is the CEO at Epipheo. He's also joined by Steven McClure. He's the creative director at Epipheo. How are you guys doing today?
Doing awesome. James, we're good. Thank you.
I'm really excited to chat with you guys. Tim Smoyer from a few episodes ago introduced me to what you guys are doing. And Tim talked to us about B2B video with really a leaning toward YouTube. And I wanted to talk to you guys about more of the strategy and messaging that goes into B2B video. There's so many people talking about video today. And so I really think this episode is going to resonate with a lot of our listeners. But before I do that, I wanted to just kind of set some context as to why you two are the people to be talking to about B2B video. So could one of you, Steven or Jeremy, just explain, real briefly, what is Epipheo and what are you guys doing over there?
Yeah, totally. This is Jeremy. So what we do is Epipheo stands for Epiphany plus video. What we've always really championed is that video is the best tool for creating epiphanies, to creating that sudden intuitive perception of the reality of something. And so we find that when clients, the big problem they have is they need their audience to have an epiphany, when they need a paradigm shift, an aha moment to really get their idea across. Maybe it's because it's complicated, or maybe, it's a new idea or new technology. They need to craft their message really carefully to be able to hit that audience. And so we do that. We have teams that are situated for just B2B companies, others that are teams that are B2C focused, and others that are focused on nonprofit or education. So we find that crafting those teams, creating those epiphanies, and figuring out how to use the latest in video tactics and video styles to be able to do that is really what we do on a day-to-day basis here.
I love it. So Jeremy, I want to start with you because I think the kind of understanding the strategy going into it. A lot of the folks listening, they're, some of them are doing video in-house. Some of them are working with agencies to have these videos produced. But as you and I were talking offline, you had mentioned some different things around strategy that brands need to be thinking about, before they approach an agency or before they try to go out on their own. They need to have a firm understanding of some, key strategic elements of what they're going to be doing with their video. You talked to me offline about this buyer's journey framework. Can you talk to our listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, so most B2B companies, your challenge is there's longer sales cycles. There's lots of different touch points that you need to do to nurture a client along. And so that funnel or buyer's journey is oftentimes how a lot of our clients think about their strategy. There could be 3 or 4 or 5 elements of the journey: attract, capture, nurture, convert, expand. What we like to do is dive into each of those 5 areas and try to figure out what is happening with video that is really making it work better. Because, for so many companies, they really can boil a lot of their marketing efforts down to a percentage game between what's happening in each of those areas of the funnel. And if they can increase an area by 1% or 2%, it can have a massive impact. So implementing video, if it's going to have that kind of an impact, makes all the sense in the world. But a lot of times people don't know exactly where to implement it, how they can get the most bang for their buck using video across the buyer's journey. That's kind of what we do, and we can dive into any of those elements of the funnel and talk through what are the latest tactics, or what are some things that might really help them reach their goals better.
Yeah, so where do you find brands struggling the most? What stage of the funnel do you see them struggling the most? Is it at the top? Or is it further down the bottom when they're actually trying to convert them into a buyer?
Well, when people think about video, oftentimes they assume at the top of the funnel is the best place to go. It's not often the biggest win, John. It's because you're thinking, I'm going to put a lot of money into a piece of content. That's got to be top of funnel. And I think that's always a great idea. But if we dive into most of our clients' metrics and figure out where can video really have the biggest impact, often in the capture area is maybe the easiest win. So whatever they're doing to try to convince somebody who's landing on their site and sort of looking around to try to figure out what they're doing and who they are, their video strategy to get that buyer to give them their email can really be a game changer. So whether it's through a thought leader series or the way that they position an explainer video, that can often increase percentage conversion on a site or on a specific landing page. So that's a place that oftentimes we want to look at, because people might think we got a 7% conversion rate on this landing page and we're pretty happy with it. But by either implementing a video strategy or enhancing a current video on the page, that can really have a big impact. But for sure, there are lots of opportunities at the other stages as well.
Yeah. So I went through an experience where I actually used a just personalized video to get folks that were on my list to extend an offer of our service, a specific offer that we're doing this next month. And that individual video, I think so many people think of really elaborate, like you said, they're thinking top of funnel and they're thinking really elaborate video, but it's been shocking to me. I just sent out the first round of 20 videos today, and the responses I'm getting are unreal. I mean, the power that video can have, even if you don't, have the budget to go elaborate, I love that, challenging people to think creatively about any type of video. I mean, you can really get people's attention, if you use the medium well. So this next thing that I want to talk to you about, Jeremy, you had mentioned offline that a lot of the things that you find yourself talking about, related to video are around business problems, and asking the brands that you guys are working with to just explain, what are your biggest business problems? And likely there's a way that video can be interjected into that. Can you talk to us about some of those problems that you find yourself talking about a lot?
Yeah, definitely. Just to use it as an example, the one you just mentioned, a lot of times people don't understand what video can do to their email strategy. So I would say that the one of the lowest hanging fruits in terms of a business problem that a great video email strategy solves is it shortens sales cycles. Mm-hmm. You can imagine what happens when you create an email and you now lose control of the conversation, because now they're probably going to, just through word of mouth, try to convince somebody upstream. How much easier would it be for them to share a video? And if it's personalized the way that you did it, that's even more powerful, because then it feels really natural to share it. And so, yeah, if you follow up in your sales conversation, one of the ways we really recommend people doing this is whatever you said to somebody on the phone in a sales conversation, if you have a library of great videos that you can use, and maybe even open it up with a personalized video and then share with them an optimized video that really answers that question, maybe even better than you did on the phone, because it was somebody who really knows the answer well and you really thought about how to answer it through the video. That's what other people in that organization are gonna see. And there's two other huge advantages to doing sales this way. One is that people are far more likely to even open and pay attention to content in video than they are. They're 4 times more likely to watch a video in an email. And so it's a really powerful way to use it. And so that's super helpful. And then, of course, the fact that the message is just perfectly optimized, and you can, if you're using HubSpot or some other marketing software that shows you when they're watching the video, you can get real-time information, Wistia, other platforms, about exactly when they're watching it. So, you might have shot an email 2 weeks ago, and then all of a sudden it's being watched by 5 people in the organization. Guess when the right time to call that organization is, right? Now you thought, I thought that was going cold, but no, they're all watching the video, they're sharing it around. And so video can really help that sales cycle get a lot shorter.
That makes perfect sense. So Jeremy, is there anything else I want to close out the interview talking to Steven about messaging. He's got a lot of really incredible ideas that he was sharing offline that I want to share with listeners. But before we kind of shift over to Steven, is there anything else around strategy that you'd like to share with listeners before we transition the conversation over to messaging?
Sure. Just one more thing on, a lot of times you look at top of funnel lead generation, and the way that people are consuming video, even in B2B context, is different. And a lot of times there's a mantra, go shorter, go shorter, go shorter. Really, I would say that's not the full story. What people do is their attention span before they will decide to give you their full attention is very short. So an example of a strategy that really does this is having a 15 to 20 second teaser video on Facebook or on LinkedIn that links to a campaign that's got a lot more video and a lot longer content. Works really, really well. You should think about breaking your video content into 2 pieces. One piece that's more like a trailer, and really is selling the larger or longer piece. So you share that on social media, you go ahead and put some paid dollars behind that piece of content, and then they're hooked if they click. And so you get them onto your website, and a lot of times they'll be happy to watch 10, 15, 20 minutes of video. They'll be happy to give you their email address to get past a gate, to get to the content that they got teased about on LinkedIn or wherever. So this kind of strategy works really well because the perceived value of video is a lot higher than oftentimes text. So even if you're using lots of white papers to get leads, to do video white papers, but to do it in this way where there's basically two videos you make, the teaser video that you use to get the leads onto your landing page, and then the longer form content that you use to really demonstrate your thought leadership and get them engaged in your product. So that combination is a killer way to resolve the business problem of how do I generate leads with a video.
And an example that comes to mind of somebody that's crushing it by doing that right now is Donald Miller from StoryBrand has a video series. So I think you can probably go to like storybrand.com if you want to see how he's doing it. That's the example that comes to mind for me. Are there any other brands that you know that are kind of executing on that strategy really well?
Yeah, if you go to stateofinbound.com, HubSpot's got a strategy where they do this very thing where they've got a teaser video, and then that's gating longer content. HubSpot's usually, they do an enormous amount of testing for their products. So what they're doing is oftentimes really it's not just that it's cutting edge, it's working. And they've got a lot of data, a ridiculous amount of data behind their tactics. So this is a great tactic to try. And Donald Miller, I think, is a perfect example of somebody who understands the power of how to use video this way. So it's not just about going shorter and shorter or dumbing it down. It's really about getting people's attention. We're in a really economy where everybody wants a return on their attention, a return on time. And so you just have to use video a little bit differently. You got to break it up into these little chunks and then give long form content, oftentimes on a landing page or behind a gate, to get email addresses. But this tactic is working better and better.
I love it. I want to transition the conversation over to Steven. I want to spend the rest of this interview talking about messaging. Steven, you had some really great ideas around messaging and what you guys are doing for your clients. The first thing that you mentioned to me offline, you said, we've got to figure out whatever brand we're working with. We've got to get down to the core of, what do you want to say? Can you kind of unpack that for us, explain it a little bit more in depth?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's funny because to hear you say it back to me, it seems initially like, well, that makes perfect sense on its own. But as I think about our work with our clients, I'm reminded of the fact that oftentimes the problem is, in some sense, they want to say everything, right? And there's this tendency we have to want to, sort of cram 7 stories into one video. And the danger in trying to say everything to everybody is you end up saying nothing to nobody, right? So we really try to sort of shepherd our clients towards what is the one thing that you want your audience to better understand, to better realize. As Jeremy mentioned, what insight do you want to kind of lead them to? We need to be sort of super focused on what you want to say. We have to do the hard work of getting rid of all the things that don't actually matter as much as you think they do, so we can say the one thing that does matter. And a secondary part of that is doing the same kind of work with the audience. Who is the audience? Oftentimes, in our discovery phase of clients, the idea will be, well, there's 4 or 5 audiences where we want to kind of reach everybody, and we try to generally push back and say, you can't talk to everybody. You have to get very specific about who your audience is. And then what we find is the more specific you get, actually, the larger application there might be because you've taken the time to be more detailed. So that's our starting point with what folks want to say.
Yeah. And then moving beyond that, Steven, you also talked about this question of why, which, Simon Sinek, we had him on the show a few episodes ago, and this idea of why is becoming very popular, but it's becoming popular because it is so important. And so the next question that you guys try to answer is really, why should the audience care? Unpack that for us a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I'd say I'm most proud of what Epipheo does is this idea of honoring the audiences, the folks we make videos for, ultimately, the stories or the sort of the targets for our stories. I think the why is part of honoring your audience. In other words, we live in a day and an age where time feels more precious than ever, and I don't think we ever want to assume that the audience has to or is going to watch or care. We want to do the hard work of figuring out why the story we're telling actually matters to their lives. I think for us, hopefully it's not overly aspirational to say that for us it feels like that's an exercise in empathy to better understand the lives of the folks we're telling stories to and why they should care about the thing we're talking about. So we have to be careful. I mean, obviously, in the B2B world, we have to think about things like ROI. And as you were talking about, Jeremy, what tactics do you need? What strategies will work? But one of the things that I most enjoy about how we work at the studio is we try to never lose sight of the fact that we're actually just people telling stories to other people. That's kind of it has a grounding effect on the way we work, and hopefully the videos we make.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. This last piece of the messaging component that I want to talk to you about, Steven, is around the type of content that is best to convey the message that you guys land on communicating. Can you talk to us about a few of the different types of videos that you've seen that have been effective?
Yeah, for sure. And as I mentioned to you offline, I think for the sort of the early days of Epipheo, we sort of specialize in what we call a flagship video, which is about 90 seconds, and it generally covered sort of, and it probably would land at the awareness, sort of the top of the funnel. This is who we are for whoever the client might be. This is what we do, maybe why you should care. What we're discovering as we dive into more and more strategy with our clients is that, as Jeremy said, there's still space for those sorts of videos, absolutely, but we are finding that, we're doing a lot more serial content. So we're creating series of videos that cover almost like chapters and stories. We're covering whether it's internal messaging or change management for one of the clients we work with. They're trying to kind of change the way internally they view their particular market. So we made a series of videos around their particular 5-year strategy. That looks like for us 6 or 7 videos that come in around a minute and a half each, but they're all targeted at a particular sort of piece of the pie for that strategy. We do, again, as Jeremy alluded to, we do pre-roll, that 30-second teaser that might take you to a campaign landing page. There's obviously, as your listeners will no doubt resonate with, social media, even for B2B clients, is a huge. It feels like the new frontier, right? Native content on Facebook and how to kind of harness those powers, that power. So for us, it's not. And we really try to, I think more and more, try to think about, instead of making the story match 90 seconds, we try to think about what is the best vehicle for this story, and maybe that is 4 15-second videos. We did a project with a client that was literally 4 15-second Instagram videos, no VO, just music, just visuals, because that's who they were going for, and that's what made the most sense for their story.
No, I think it can almost be overwhelming to think through, the different ways that you can convey a message, which is why I think it's so important to have a partner like Epipheo, someone that is in this and is living and breathing and has seen what's worked, what hasn't worked for other brands. So I love what you guys are up to. Could you guys share, if folks want to stay connected with you and maybe they want to dig in to ask more questions about strategy or messaging individually, how can they connect with you? And then how can they also stay connected with Epipheo if maybe they're looking for a video partner?
Yeah, so this is Steven. The easiest way to reach me is, and this is great, it's just Steven@Epipheo.com, Steve, and I'm the only Steven with a V at the studio, so I lucked out in the email lottery.
Love it.
You can email me direct, and then I'll let Jeremy walk through his.
Yeah, totally. So, and if you go to our website, we've got a contact us page. We have a Facebook page. We have a YouTube channel that we have a lot of fun on, creating epiphanies on a regular basis about ideas we think are really fascinating. We do a lot of sharing on LinkedIn, especially with our B2B clients. And so you can find a bunch of Epiphians on there, sharing our latest work all the time. And and so we're working on lots of new content as well that'll help our clients understand the video strategies we're doing. We go to a bunch of different conferences, so there's different places to. I'll be at VidCon this year speaking on video strategy. I would love to have anybody reach out and we can go a step deeper and try to understand how to work for them.
Love it. I love it. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you both so much for your time today. This has been super, super valuable, so I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks. Absolutely.
If you're a B2B marketer, we want to feature you on sites like the Huffington Post, Social Media Examiner, and Chief Marketer. Every week, we send out a question related to B2B marketing. We use the responses to those questions to fuel the content we write for really popular websites. So head over to sweetfishmedia.com/questions and sign up today.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.